Hi, everybody. Welcome to Downstage, right, where theater finds its voice. We are so happy to have you here with us for episode 5, which is our arts education panel. You're here with your host, Simmon Fecho, and
Melissa Statema.
We are so happy to be here together and welcoming this panel. So I want to get right into welcoming our guests. We have 4 performance arts educators from the Charlotte metro region here today, and they're here to take a deep dive into the rewards and challenges of their careers as performing arts educators. So I am so happy to introduce our guests. First being Allison Andrews. She is a theater arts teacher at Bandy's High School in Catawba, North Carolina. She's also a performer and a director in the area. We have Jeff Hartman, who is the founder and owner of Hickory Arts in Hickory, North Carolina, where he also teaches. He is also a performer, a musician, and a music director. Kelly Hutchinson, she is the founder and owner of Mosaic-Arts, which started in upstate New York and is now based here in Statesville, North Carolina, and she teaches voice with Mosaic-Arts. She's also an opera singer, a director, and she teaches at the Canon School in Concord, North Carolina. And last, but certainly not least, we have Daniel Lung. He's a dancer, choreographer, and a local dance educator. He's worked with public schools, after school programs, and he's also been an artistic director for different dance studios in the area, and he is based in Conover, North Carolina. So welcome all. We're so happy to have you. All right, so we're going to dive right into the topic. And the AATE, the American Alliance for Theater Education, they have some great detail on their site about the innumerable and significant impacts of performing arts education on students. And obviously, we're going to unpack a lot of that in our conversation today. 93% of the public believes that arts, including theater, are vital to well-rounded education. Performing arts education improves reading comprehension, both verbal and nonverbal communication skills, school attendance. It reduces high school dropout rates, skills and academic performance in children and youth with learning disabilities are improved by learning the arts. And there's a ton of statistics as we talk about this further. There's just a whole bevy of statistics that talk about the value of performance arts education to develop young people into their future. And still, the government funding for performance arts is less than 1/5 of the revenue that performers and entertainment adds to the gross national product. So that makes it even more challenging for quality arts education to exist, not just in our schools, but also in our communities. And so I'm really happy to have this group here because we have such a varied group of folks who both have worked in public schools as well as teach privately and have worked as performers themselves as well. And so I think there's going to be a lot of really good discussion on being a performance arts educator and what education in the arts is all about. So I wanted to start with, and this one I do want to have each of you answer, sort of how did you come to be passionate about the performing arts? What brought that to you in your life?
Hi guys, my name is Allison, and there's a lot of things that made me passionate about the performing arts. I would say most likely I can pinpoint it to when I first saw my live performance. I grew up in Miami, but then I moved to Charlottesville, North Carolina. And if you know those two areas, that is a huge culture shock. And I didn't really get to experience much theater as a kid. And until I moved to Charlottesville Elementary, I went and saw my first live performance. And that was at the Green Room Community Theater. And oddly enough, it was Fiddler on the Roof. And I don't know why, but I became so enamored with that performance. And I remember sitting in the chair and I came to see my friend. And I thought, wow, people can do this. This seems really, really fun. So to pinpoint it, I started becoming passionate once I started being exposed to it. So being able to watch shows and that just made me want to audition. And then I just kind of haven't stopped.
Awesome. Daniel, you want to go next?
Sure, I'll go next. As a preacher's kid, I grew up in churches, all different locations, Indiana, Illinois, Ohio, and of course, North Carolina. But ever since I was little, I even have a picture of this. I think it was like 3 years old, maybe. It is a picture of me and my mom singing a duet in church. And it's ever since then, give me a microphone, give me, a stage to get on. I mean, I can't say that there was like a defining moment, but it's been a part of my life ever since then.
Hi, this is Kelly. This one's really easy for me. There was always music growing up in my house. My mom would play piano, and my dad and my sister and I would gather around and sing. And you go to my grandmother's house, and daddy's playing guitar, my uncle's playing banjo, and we're all singing. But that was very private and insular. And what really made me passionate about the performing arts was as I got older and realized there were people who were the same kind of weird as me, and, who would burst into song in the middle of the room, talking about nothing. And there were people who did kind of have songs running through their head, and the world began to match the world that was in my head. And I was around other people who also had that. And so the community that I found with other performing artists and the acceptance to just kind of be wherever you are in your head out loud was huge for me. So that was the very beginning.
And Jeff?
Well, there's not really one defining moment for me. I started, my parents brought home this old player piano when I was 9 years old. I had never taken music lessons or anything. I sat down at it and just started playing it. And I don't know how. And my parents started scratching their heads. They're like, well, we might have something here. So they started getting me lessons. And theater started when I was 12. And I did The Wizard of Oz in elementary school. And I started noticing the attention, that it got you on stage. And also it gave me confidence. I was kind of a quiet, shy kid. And so when I started playing music and started getting involved with theater, it started giving me a confidence that I didn't have before. And one quick story that I tell, when I was about 13 or 14, my uncle had the cutest girlfriend. He was about 10 years older than me, 11 years older than me. And I was playing the piano. One time they came over at my house, and she said, you're going to get a lot of girlfriends by playing piano like that. And it kind of gave, so I tell that little story because there's kind of some superficial reasons for getting into music as well. It turned the girls' heads at the time. And so I always jest about that, but yeah, I mean, mostly it was a confidence thing for me. And, it has built and built over the years.
No, I agree. I think the confidence building is a big piece as well. And I think you guys all, everything you said, I think I can agree with, and I'm sure Melissa as well.
Absolutely.
So after you decided that performing arts was something that you enjoyed being a part of for yourself, why did you decide to pursue a career as a performance arts educator?
This is Kelly. When I was in upstate New York after graduate school, well, actually, graduate school was in Cincinnati, and that's when the economy tanked and there wasn't a job to be had. And I applied for jobs all over the country and ended up in upstate New York working for a church. And while I was there, I met so many incredible performers, people who were so talented, who were out of work. And, everybody was trying to figure out what to do with their life. And so we ended up creating opportunities for people to perform. That's how Mosaic actually started. And that just lit a fire in me to see how many people desperately needed to create art, even if they weren't professionals, even if they were just community people who liked doing it. It filled something within them that was really, really important. And so that was a turning point for me. And that's when I started seeking out more opportunities to be able to be a part of the world of education, not just performing.
Allison, if you wouldn't mind speaking to this question, just because I think being that you work at a public school, I think you can offer a really unique perspective on why you decided to move that direction.
So I'm going to equate it back to my last statement about moving. And it was my first day in middle school. The school year had already started, and middle school is just an awkward time for everybody. I had no friends because I just moved, and they put me in a drama class. I was so nervous, but my teacher at the time, her name is Amy Bean, if any of you guys know her, she made me feel so welcome and so invited, and she just made the classroom experience so fun and something that I truly enjoyed. She didn't just teach me, performing arts and theater. She taught me how to be a good person and to take whatever life throws at you. And throughout our years, she has become, one of my best friends, a second mom, a mentor. I dedicate a lot of my shows to her just because she changed my life so much. And a lot of people ask me, why didn't you go into performance instead of education? You like to sing, you like to act. Why didn't you pursue that route? And I just always go back to her. And I think if I can do what she has done for me in my life to one person, then I need to be in education to help them feel more comfortable and more confident and to gain life experience through theater. So just her, she's the reason. So.
That's amazing. And Daniel, I think you had something you wanted to add.
Yeah, it's actually kind of interesting how similar, stories that we have. Because the same way, again, as a preacher's kid, we moved around a ton. So it was really hard to make friends. The schools that you'd get put into, like you'd meet people who were friends since they were like 3 years old, and you were an outsider and you automatically got put there. And so I think school is definitely hard for a lot of us who do identify as outsiders. And literally the same for me. I had auditioned to be in a show when I was in middle school, My Fair Lady, and super, super, super fun. But I met the dance teacher who was the choreographer there for My Fair Lady. She was like, you need to come and take dance. And literally just kind of changed my world because, it became my way of, my outlet, my way of dealing with the stress of school and, and the struggles of not having a ton of friends and things like that. I remember, she actually let me, work off some of my tuition by going to the dance studio and sweeping and taking out trash and things like that to help with that. And I remember I would just put on some music and like very footloose style around the studio while nobody was there. And it was my way of dealing with things. And I think that feeling is definitely attached to, my teacher who literally introduced me to that world, So there's definitely one of the main reasons why I decided to start teaching.
Melissa, I'm sorry. I know you wanted to add on there.
Yeah, so I did not get exposed to theater per se until high school. I had performed, from a very young age, dancing, singing, doing all that fun stuff. But it wasn't until high school. And like you guys said, I finally found a place where I felt like I belonged and didn't feel so weird and like an outcast. And my high school theater teacher, we were doing our big musical, which was Hello, Dolly. And I got to be Minnie Faye, which was really fun. But he asked me to choreograph one of the numbers. And after that one number, he asked if I would do the entire show. And I said yes, not knowing what I was getting into. And I found out that I loved it. And before that moment, I did not realize how much I would enjoy teaching others and coming up with stuff, getting to come up with something new. And it was just fantastic feeling, being able to teach people. And from that moment on, there was this new possibility of maybe I can do this down the road for a job, because it had not even crossed my mind prior. But even in college, I went to college for theater and dance, and no one talked about doing it as a profession outside of performance. So I had to get out of college and then start figuring out my own ways to make it work, because we didn't have community theater where we lived at that time. So it wasn't really until I moved here in North Carolina that I've gotten to dive into the community theater by way of teaching and directing and all of that, and making a career out of that. So thank goodness for high school and wonderful theater teachers.
Well, and I did want to add too, I mean, as a sort of tag on to what you were saying, Melissa, and what Allison, just the fact that Allison works in a public school, it's really interesting because where I'm from in Pennsylvania, there is not theater taught in school at all. You're lucky if a school has a music program. You're lucky if your school has a high school musical and maybe even a middle school musical, which occasionally happens. I was lucky enough to have that. But those are just, that's just like your English teacher or someone in the school who's doing it on the side. But there is no theater learning in public schools. And here, I mean, the fact that I know people who teach theater to elementary school kids blows my mind. I can't believe it. And I think it's the best thing ever. And I think that's one amazing thing about North Carolina, although I feel like I'm sure we would all say that there should be a lot more of arts education in North Carolina and everywhere, but it's a really interesting thing to come from a place where that is just not done. And if you want to be interested in theater, you basically have to get into it by being in a dance class or by, your parent, knowing that you can hold a tune and deciding to take you to an audition or something.
Fun fact, Allison actually gave me my first job here in North Carolina at the Green Room. 3 years? Was it 3 years ago? Sousa musical. So that was the first time I got to choreograph here in North Carolina. So I want to thank you, Allison. It's been a fantastic.
Thank you. I love listening to you talk about how you've enjoyed getting to teach people. And I definitely see that in your work. I mean, you're just so gentle with even the most saddest dancer out there. So you're just awesome. Thank you.
And I really loved Allison she did answer another question that I had, which was about the arts educator that has had the biggest impact on you. So, and Daniel also kind of answered that question. Jeff, Kelly, do you want to throw in some arts educators? Go for it, Jeff.
Yeah, I was going to kind of tag on to what Allison and Daniel were saying. I had some really great mentors. My high school theater teacher, some of you probably know from all our blogging and posting from Bright Star, our mutual friend David Townsend and I, we had the same wonderful high school theater teacher. Of course, she was mainly an English teacher and handled the theater program the best she could. And what an inspiration she was. She was amazing. She took a personal interest in everybody that was at that in that theater. Well, not even beyond her theater classes and her English classes. I mean, she was just that kind of a person, just a very hands-on, not that kind of hands-on, but very, very personal touch with everybody. And I really, really appreciate it. I needed that. A lot of people needed that. It gave us confidence. It gave us someone to confide in. And so she was the very first huge inspiration for me as a teacher. When I started getting involved with community theater, a guy named Buzz Atwood was a huge influence on me. He was both an educator, a performer, a singer, you name it. And again, it was another situation where he took a personal interest in me. He nurtured me. He nurtured my craft, my art, my everything. And so, out of college, I was kind of doing side gigs, private teaching gigs, and to support my professional career, and ended up at a couple of studios here and there. And I just got this sense of urgency to start wanting to give back the same way all that nurturing, you know, what that was given to me back in high school and beyond. So it was kind of a pay it forward situation for me. And there's nothing more rewarding than touching someone's life and being able to mentor somebody, if you're lucky enough to be considered a mentor. So it's very special and very sacred to me. And it keeps me going. It keeps me interested in my own art. So yeah, that's me.
I love that. I totally, I echo all of that. Kelly, any educator you'd like to share?
So many. So I won't mention the ones that motivated me by telling me I had no business in this business. And there are many. Those were great motivators. But, you know, professionally, what took me from being a student to an actual professional, I had some really great mentors in college. Alan Mosier at the Youngstown State University got me through my undergrad finally. And then I went to Cincinnati for graduate school, and Dr. Kelly Hale and Kenneth Shaw were just two professors there who really made me realize, you know, I had something that could go out in front of other people. And that was huge for me. But in reality, it all kind of came back to this rock star group of educators when I was in high school here in Statesville. And, you know, when I talk about back in the day, this was it. So it was the era of Debbie Miller in the theater at the high school. Gail Creech was doing music at the high school. Jennifer Grant was in charge of a Statesville Community Theater at the time. And these people all, you know, with their programs really got me excited, helped me to feel secure and talented and like I had something to offer. But what it really comes down to, and I will preach this my whole life, is Dan Pardue. Dan Pardue at the time was at First Baptist Church, and he collected performers, he collected singers, and he had all of the best, medium, and worst singers in the county in his program at the church. We came from all over. And we would do dinner theater. We would take choir tour. We did so much. You know, he would trade lessons for participation. You know, and that was my first glimpse outside of Statesville, outside of Iredell County. It was a way for me to see the world through music, through being on stage, outside of, you know, whatever I just knew from my experience before. And because of Dan Pardue and his wife, Jane is a phenomenal pianist and accompanist. These people have followed me my entire career as a performer, as an educator, as a girl who moved back to Statesville after being somewhere else. And so it's not just that they taught me how to be an artist, they are in my fiber as a person. And this has really influenced how I try to be as an educator and as a performer, that it's more than just presenting something that goes at people. It needs to be in who we are. And so those are the names that I carry with me always.
Yeah, I think one thing that I wanted to touch on, something that you spoke to beautifully, and all of you really did mention it in one way or another, is sort of that emotional connection. Beyond just the learning piece, that there really was this nurturing and this emotional connection. And some of the stuff that I sent you guys as prep for this conversation had some really good info on some programs that are out there that are focusing on helping young kids learn, have social and emotional learning through the arts. And I just thought that was so important, because something that I work in human resources for a large organization. And although what I do and what our company does has literally zero to do with the arts, at the same time, we talk about engagement and empathy endlessly. We talk about it with our managers. We talk about it, you know, we're constantly reinforcing that you need to engage people and you need to have empathy with people no matter what. And those are things that I learned from arts educators, that I learned from doing theater and from performing. Those are things that I found from embodying characters and learning how to understand characters from others who taught me how to do that. And I feel like I've learned so much more about myself by being in the arts. So much more even than I've learned a lot of technical skills as well, but I would say that I probably count higher the skills of interaction and communication and all of these other things that have helped me be a better person when working with other people, and also knowing myself more and being able to look into myself and really know what's important to me and who I am and all of those things. So I think that that's another beautiful layer of arts education, that it's not just about learning the thing. It's about what the thing helps you to do on a much broader scale, and then in yourself as well. So very, very interesting information.
I mean, that was a great cap end to that question, but I would not be able to go to sleep tonight if I didn't talk about one more person. And that's actually my high school course teacher, Allison. If any of you guys know her as well. I have the unique and awesome position in my life where I also teach at the school that I graduated from. So now I'm friends and colleagues with all of the teachers that were a part of my life. And so Allison Kiesler, she impacted me as a person in high school, but now she's able to impact my career, which is the second part of the question. We are colleagues through and through. She supports me and I support her. I try to go to all of her concerts. She comes to all of my shows. And I just want to give a shout out to all of the teachers at my school who also come to my performance, not my performances, but my students' performances, because it shows that not only have they supported me, but now they're supporting my students. And it's kind of like a cool tier effect. I just wanted to throw that out into the universe.
Do the same in that when I was talking earlier, the high school teacher I was speaking about, I did not mention his name, and I would like to. His name is Ken Rush. Fantastic. It was the first time I realized when you're a high school drama teacher, you have to know not just about acting, but you have to know literally everything: set design, costuming, makeup. I was blown away at the kind of knowledge you have to have and the skills you need to have to be a high school drama teacher. And I mean, my mind was literally blown. Also, my college professors, Deborah McInerney and Robert Homer Drummond, we had a really small department. It was a small private school, but they never made it feel small. They had this wealth of knowledge as if I was going to a massive university. And they taught in a way that was so kind and respectful while still getting results. Whereas I had been in some dance studios growing up, these particular ones very briefly because of how they treated people, but it was calling names and belittling and screaming and yelling. And these other teachers, the three of them, taught me that you don't have to do that to get the results you're looking for. You can be just a good person and still have a fantastic outcome.
Melissa, me and you have had a few conversations about that sort of thing. Yeah, I'm right there with you.
I love that. And also, I mean, while we're kind of on the topic, if anyone wants to talk sort of about their teaching style, if you fancy that you have a style, is there a particular way you approach your students? Is it very individualized? Do you feel like it needs to be more blanket? Sort of how do you do that?
Well, I want to kind of piggyback off of, what Melissa said, especially, when she brought up, about dance studios and about, the meanness that, I think it exists in the arts, period, end of story. There's just some people that, unfortunately, like, you never know what they're going through. I mean, it could be life problems and things like that, but anytime that kind of translates into your education, that's a problem. But that is one of the things that I wanted to talk about, because like in dance specifically, there is this old way of thinking, teaching, that it's very regimented, it's very cut dry, this is the way it is, if you don't like it, go somewhere, because, that's just the way that they were taught how to do things. And I've had dance teachers that have been, very Army drill sergeant like, and I've had some that have been super, super sweet, wouldn't hurt a fly. To me, my way of teaching, I'm in the middle. I feel like it needs to be a good balance, and I think that you need to cater your approach off of your students as well, and their personalities and what they need too, because there are some kids that will not respond to that drill sergeant way of doing things, and then there are people that will, like, if you're super sweet to them, they're going to look at you like you're crazy, and they're not going to respond to that either. So my and I don't fault anybody for any which style that you teach, because there are ways that it works out perfectly and there are ways that it could do better. So, I think as educators, it's something that should consistently grow and should consistently change with time. Oh, so-and-so does this, and they're getting good response from their students. Maybe I could imply that into my, lifelong learner kind of thing. So, well, I think that, everybody kind of develops their own style. I think that what makes a great teacher is one that continually adapts and continually changes and continually takes new ideas and new things and integrates it and makes what they do even better.
Yeah, the educator needs to continue to educate themselves in how to better educate their students.
Yeah, my students here, my adult and youth students here, fail with fervor from me all of the time. And that's the motto that I use professionally and as an educator, because we have to fail big. We have to really just take the leap to do the things that we're doing. But in order for that to work as an educator, or with professionals, is you have to create an environment of safety around that, where you feel safe to take the leap, to be vulnerable, and to do the things that might be embarrassing or nerve-wracking or may touch upon some really uncomfortable things from your past. And to do that, you have to start the conversation of, I want to be able to make corrections with you that have nothing to do with how I feel about you. I think you're wonderful, and I love you, and I love teaching you, and I think you are very important. But when I say you did something wrong, or there's something that I prefer that you do differently, that doesn't mean I'm upset with you at all. That's another thing we're going to try. And it takes a lot of effort to build that relationship, especially with a room full of students, especially in middle school. But, it's totally worth it, because then even for just those few minutes, they can forget who they are in the hallway, and they get to be the performer they are in that safety, in that classroom setting or in that rehearsal setting. And then you can make a mistake, or you can try new things without it being so personal that it's hurtful to be corrected. And actually, it can grow to where being corrected is what you look for. It's like, wait, how do I do it better? What's the next thing? Ooh, let's try this. Oh man, that was crap. Let's do something else. And it really does start to grow. And that's really exciting to see happen. It takes a lot more effort than just the regimented, okay, here's our 5 things that we're doing, do them. But I think it's really worth it in the end.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think you touched on something important. I think trust, I say this a lot, trust is the currency of art. And that when you are an artist, when you do theater, when you do whatever, especially in a theater environment, I think you need to trust yourself. You need to trust the people you work with. You need to trust the people who are giving the vision. You need to trust, and that can be so hard to do. And it doesn't matter, even if you're even if you're a professional and you're getting paid and you're doing all of those things, it doesn't make it any easier to trust just because there's a dollar amount on a check. It's such an exercise in trust.
I know I mentioned some dance studios earlier, and I just want to specify that I spent most of my time at Joan Crawford Dance Studio, and I had a fantastic teacher named Melissa Stokes. I was not talking about that dance studio. In case she listens, or any of my friends who dance with me, she taught me how to not just dance, but how to perform, and it revolutionized my thought about dance. So thank you, Melissa, but also for teaching. I teach creative works classes, theater classes at the Green Room Community Theater. And I love what you said, Daniel. You can't just go in with one style of teaching. I teach various classes, and every single class is completely different. It depends on the age range. And if it's a class of 20 girls or a class of 4, it just depends. So I really love what you said, Daniel, about having to be flexible and open to challenge yourself to kind of adjust here and there. So I really liked what you had to say, Daniel.
It's all about individualism for me. We work with everyone from a 5-year-old who can barely read to 70-year-olds who aren't interested in performing. It's just a personal goal for them. So individualizing the curriculum is top of the list for us. And again, what you said about trust, spot on. I couldn't agree more. To apply, I understand that under some circumstances, like a cookie cutter way of doing things can be the right approach. But for the most part, where we're at with our studio and the way we prefer to teach, it's all about catering to that individual need or personal goal. As a matter of fact, the first thing I say to every single one of my students when they come in is, what's your goal for today? My dad beat goals into me. I mean, he was a very goals-oriented person. That goal can be something very small. I just want to be able to hit this note today. I want to work on the shape of this sound today. It could be very, very small, or it can be something they want to accomplish 3 months from now or a year from now, and they want to work towards that. So, exploring and cultivating what that individual's personal need is with respect to where they're at that point in time is very, very important to us.
Great discussion so far. I'm absolutely loving this. This episode could be like 9 hours long if you guys were cool with it. For you, what has been really the biggest challenge that you faced as a performance arts educator? And I know with COVID-19 going on right now, the elephant in all of the rooms, what has that been the biggest challenge, or have there been other challenges that have been really, really consuming for you as an arts educator?
So right now, that's kind of what's been racking my brain. If you're my friend on social media, you'll see over the last 3 days, I've been vocal about challenges that I've been experiencing with COVID. So first and foremost, I mean, I'm sure all of us were a part of some production that had to be canceled or inevitably postponed. I mean, I guarantee that's something. But just to kind of piggyback off the conversations that we've had in the last couple of minutes about what is your style of teaching? What goals do you have for your kids? I'm kind of in this existential crisis where my style of teaching is completely out the window. I am based on collaborative learning. I think theater is such an important collaborative thing in the classroom, especially with kids who, are shy. You can partner them with kids who are your extroverts and who are ready to get stuff done in the theater classroom. But now we can't really do that. And so I'm trying to question my last 6-7 years of teaching and rethink every lesson plan that I've made to make it go remote or do it to where they can socially distance. And so I'm having to be more creative and trying to figure these things out with, 3 weeks before school starts. And just to clarify, for my county, Catawba County Schools, what the board has chosen to do is go on an AABB remote learning schedule. So I see students with the last names, I can't remember the exact letters, but A through L on Monday and Tuesday. And then Wednesday and Thursday, it's M through Z. So now my kids who have grown together, I'm now not even going to have them in the same building at the same time. So I can't remember who it was. I think it was Daniel talking about adaptation. So I'm having to completely adapt everything that I've done. And I know we all are having to do that, but it's just in the public school system, I've got so many laws and regulations that I have to follow. And it's going to take a lot of work to unpack my last 6-7 years in the next 3 weeks. So
that's a lot. I agree. I know from seeing those posts, etc. I have been sending good vibes your way, for sure, because I know that must be extremely difficult, and bravo to you. I mean, I know it's your job, but you take it very personally because you know that it means something, not just to you, but to your students. And I'm sure whatever you come up with will be valuable to everyone that works with you every day, including your colleagues. So
she's incredibly creative. So I have no doubt she's going to find some way of making this year spectacular for them. And yes, it is your job, but at the same time, this is not the job you signed up for necessarily in this particular way. So all the teachers out there, like, I commend all of you because this is so incredibly challenging right now.
Thank you. And it's not just teachers, it's guidance counselors, it's data managers, it's everyone that has to create these schedules. So I really appreciate you guys talking about, I'll be creative and I'll be able to do it, but I'm excited for the collaboration amongst the teachers within the county, to where normally we wouldn't talk to each other. I know now we're probably trying to be on each other's backs about, hey, what are you doing this week? Or what are you doing this week? Can I borrow this? Can I borrow that? So it only lends itself to collaboration in a different light, which I'm excited for.
Hopefully, even when things go back to normal, this will start a new trend of relying on each other and being able to use each other in that kind of way, not use in a negative way, but in a positive way.
So I was wondering, Jeff, if you would be comfortable speaking to how Hickory Arts has been impacted by COVID. I think that you've posted a lot of really enlightening things on social media that I think have helped us all better understand the struggles of what it's like to try to run an art studio. So can you speak to that a little bit?
Well, so we had to shut down just like everybody else when the stay-at-home order came in. And, going back to what we're saying about individualism, the flip side of that is everybody's got their own unique circumstance and own unique opinion as to what should be happening and what shouldn't be happening. So for the most part, we've been okay since the stay-at-home order ended. However, now you're faced with the mask debate. And you're faced with, some people take it seriously, some people don't. So our staff is put in a tough situation, as I'm sure everybody is, and delicately balancing the conversations you're having, balancing the needs everyone has, because so much of what we do as artists and actors auditioning online, all that stuff is still continuing to happen. So there are still some needs that are there, but some people are afraid to come in, and some people are a little too gung-ho to come in. Again, probably beating a dead horse at this point, but the point being that there's such a wide, varying degree of opinions, and it's just tough to balance. I'd say that's the hardest thing. As far as the facility, we're fortunate. We're small enough to where we can control things pretty much the way we want to, and that really that's not been as difficult as I know it is for some other people. So we're very grateful for that. But we've had to do fundraising like so many other people. And we've had to, keep our studio in we've had to remind people that we're still here, that they're not alone, that we're here to support people. We've gone as far as to, people have needs at home and they can't, they need help. We'll go to their house. We'll do whatever we can. We're not just sitting around waiting for people to come in. We're going to them and we're trying to help people personally. And I'm probably all over the place with this, but that's kind of how I feel. I feel like we're all over the place with all of this. So we've been going back through our history. We've been sharing, this is our 10th anniversary. This is certainly not how we expected to spend our 10th anniversary. We just had a concert that was scheduled, then it was canceled. And because of phase 2 being extended, we have a production of The Last 5 Years coming up. That was postponed. It was supposed to open August 13th. Now we're looking at September 17th. We're trying to hang on to things loosely, plan the best that we can. It's tough. It's like everything's just in flux. There's so many variables to consider. And I think, I feel like artists juggle this better than most people. I think that we're used to having to be flexible. We're used to having to have one foot here and the other foot in this and in that. So I'm proud of the people that I'm working with, the students that we have, the colleagues that we work with, and seeing how resilient and creative that they're being with doing stuff online or trying things outside or, trying things in different ways. So I'm very happy with the arts community right now. And so, anyway, I've rambled on long enough, but that's kind of where we're at. We're just all over the place.
Well, and if anyone else, I don't know if anyone else wants to speak to, has it been challenging, because of other people's circumstances as well? Maybe a parent lost a job or, things like that. Have you found that it's, especially in the more privatized lessons, that it's been harder to keep students, et cetera? And again, understandably so, but because it's impacting other people as well and their jobs and finances, et cetera. So Kelly, did you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, a little bit. The thing that I'm finding is everybody's having this existential crisis of identity. And, I spend a lot of time, I'm a student of the Alexander technique, right? And so he talked a lot about end gaming. You don't always just want to go to that end product, but that's kind of our habit, isn't it? If we're in the classroom, we're working toward a concert or we're working toward the end of the year and all of these benchmarks that we give ourselves. So now everybody is being forced to re-examine their actual identity. And, companies are doing it, individuals are doing it, teachers are doing it, because everything's turned upside down between, everything that happened with COVID-19. We've got the Black Lives Matter movement going on. We've got LGBTQIA+ issues all over the place. Like everything is just upside down. But it also gives us the opportunity to move in a positive direction toward that. And the thing that I work with the people who are in my world is, we are artists all the time. I'm an artist when I take out my garbage. Whether I'm on stage or teaching or working toward a performance, it doesn't matter. I'm still an artist. So on those days when I get really overwhelmed with, oh my God, what's happening with my life? I just have to remember, okay, I have this blessing. I have this gift that I carry with me all the time. I have these experiences and these people in my life who are going to be there regardless. So I can either, stay in mourning for what was, or I can start moving forward and figuring out, okay, you know what? I'm overwhelmed, but how do I address all these things? So now I'm looking at, racial and cultural implications of repertoire. I'm looking at, all right, if we don't have a concert, what are we going to teach? What's important? You know, I'm not putting together a production, so now what? You know, and it's forcing these conversations to happen that may not have happened before. And the creativity and the sensitivity and just really wonderful stuff is coming out of this. But it takes more than just me. It has to be a conversation with other people. And that's why, you know, conversations like this are so important, because we're all coming from different areas, but it's going to influence us in very positive ways. And we don't even know how yet. It's until we put it into practice. So that's the silver lining that I keep looking for, but it's also the big challenge.
Well, and I'm really glad you mentioned that and sort of what's going on in the world also beyond COVID, because there's a lot of things happening right now that I think are impacting everyone's psyche and helping us, force us to reevaluate our approaches and our interactions with people and all of those things. And I actually, one of the blog posts I wrote for Downstage, right, was about the arts and allyship, and just the basic thesis of what I wrote was more that the arts, it wasn't really, it didn't provide any answers. So if you read it and you're like, there are no answers of exactly what I should do here, it wasn't about providing answers. It was about remembering that as artists, we have the tools that allow us to be adaptable and make great change and understand complex ideas. We have the skills to let other people teach us things that maybe we thought we knew, but we didn't, and, you know, things like that. So I think there's, and Jeff definitely touched on that as well. I think there's a lot of things within the arts that make artists very capable of dealing with challenging circumstances. And also kind of bringing it back to the idea of sort of arts education for the Black, Latinx communities. There's a lot of inequities there. It's staggering from a demographic perspective. And some of the data that I found shows that Black and Latinx students have less than half of the access to arts education as their white peers. So the white peers are at like a 50% and they're at half of that. So that's crazy. And on top of that, students from low socioeconomic status are 5 times more likely to drop out of high school when they have not a lot of access to the arts and arts education. So as a performing arts educator, how are you working to open up more access to the arts and arts education for all, and thinking about how you teach and what you teach to better allow for that diversity and inclusion?
So I'll speak on this a little bit. So while I do teach at Bandy's High School right now, I used to teach at Bunker Hill High School, and those high schools are 10, 15 minutes away, but the demographics are completely different. It is mind-boggling how different they are. Bunker Hill is probably one of the most diverse schools in Catawba County, and Bandy's High School is predominantly white. And as a white woman, I'm saying that, you know, and as a student who went there, I'm saying that. And just the resources are crazy different between the two schools. So I remember at Bunker Hill, we had maybe like 2 Chromebook carts to share between the whole school. And then I transitioned over to Bandy's, and you can sign up, you know, for whatever you want. Now, thankfully that's changed. We have a K64 program to where now all high school students have Chromebooks. So that has been a great change. And it's very interesting. So at Bunker Hill, I was able to direct Once on This Island, which is a story told 100% on cultural differences and skin color. And my students are at Bandy's. I would never touch that show. There's no way that you can do that. And so I've tried to educate my students at Bandy's and say that here's why we can't do that show. We can support it, we can watch it, we can talk about the story, but there's just some things we can and cannot do. And as educators, we have to be advocates for what's right. I'm part of this theater group on Facebook, and so many people are like, can I do Once on This Island with a white T-Moon? And if you know the story, no, you cannot, you know? So it's just being in a constant state of educating yourself on what's right and what's wrong. And unfortunately, not everyone has the same viewpoint, right? What's right and what's wrong. So it's just educating yourself as much as you are educating your students, making sure that you're aware of what's okay and what's not okay. So that way your students can see that role model position in that stance.
Well, I think at its core, I think the investment in public arts education is critical. I know, we talk a lot about theater as with as many programs that there are in schools in North Carolina that have theater, there are even less that have dance. And it's very, it's very stark, the difference with dance education, that those that are getting the really great dance education are those that can afford it. It's a huge issue. Now, having that said, I have taught in the public school where they have had dance programs, and it is such an amazing thing to see all these kids who would not have gotten opportunities because their parents couldn't afford a private education, getting to get that foundation and getting to get a well-rounded education as well, even more so than in private school. A lot of my public, training has eked over into my, whenever I would teach at a private school as well, because my public education, we talked about dance history, we talked about improvisation, composition, all these things that make a well-rounded dance education. A lot of times, like we talked about before, it's that end game. We got to get to the recital. And, and so even in private education, I think that there is some room for growth as well. But like I said, I think at its core, I think we've got to continually invest in public education, because it's going to help with access, especially for, like you said, the low socioeconomic students, as well as those of color as well. They need to be given that opportunity.
Yeah, I agree. I think you said so many good things there. And I think we've talked about, probably we're going to have to change our name on this podcast to Access, because we've talked a lot about access in our previous episodes. Because access is so important. And the truth of the matter is the arts are often very based on who can afford to see them, who can afford to take lessons, who can afford to, get rides to the lessons, who can, all of those have a lot of impact.
So I want to go back to the conversation about, the things that we choose for our students and the things that we're teaching. Often I find myself wanting to slip into the easy route of, I'm going to present this information to you and I want you to just soak it in. But now I really think the thing I'm challenging myself to do is to have a conversation with my students. Have the hard conversation, tell them about my process, tell them why I considered one song but then decided not to do it because of its history or its background. And instead of just giving them the information and letting it wash over them, ask them, okay, so I'm not going to do Jimmy Crack Corn anymore because it's in a lot of the elementary books, right? So do you know why? Can you imagine why? And then have that uncomfortable conversation, because a lot of times we steer clear of it. And now not having the excuse of the concert coming up or, these end markers, it's forcing me to say, okay, you know what, how can I work in these conversations? How can we say, okay, so, how would a gender fluid person feel about this piece of music? Or let's choose a hypothetical concert set. So, what are we going to sing and what are we not? What's our theme? And actually give the students a chance to be a part of that conversation instead of us just being the experts and handing it to them. Because I find myself really schooled whenever I let the students tell me what's on their minds.
I was just going to briefly touch on the access with respect to the Hispanic families that we've worked with and that we've been in conversation with. The predominant issue is, well, of course, financially, and our remedy for that is to scholarship many of these families and students. But some of the other logistical problems are transportation. And I think you touched on some of that, getting rides and those sorts of logistical things. Many of these Hispanic families that we've personally been in touch with have very large families. Mom and dad are working sometimes 2 jobs. When they come in, there's sometimes 4 to 5 other kids in tow, and they have a great desire to learn a musical instrument or to learn acting, but the logistics are always in their way. And I think some of the remedies for that is to go to them rather than expect them to always come to you. I think that with respect to theaters, I think I've been on a tirade for 20 some years about how I think childcare can make a huge difference with who is involved in community theater, not just for large families and in situations like this, but also parents who want to continue to be involved. And so I think a lot of these logistics get in the way. And of course, financially, I think that's easy. I think you accommodate that. You offer scholarships. You suck it up and you do the right thing, and just you offer these families the kind of relief that you can give them. And but again, I'm probably beating a dead horse with this, but you have to accommodate all these tricky logistics that get in the way. And I think once we do that, you start to see that sort of involvement flow a little bit better.
But Jeff, what you were saying earlier, when Grace was younger and could not stay home alone, even if we had community theaters nearby, we couldn't. We had no one to watch our kid. We didn't have family nearby, and we didn't make the kind of money where we could pay someone 5-6 nights a week to go to rehearsals. So we've got to find creative ways to make it more accessible to more people. And if that means coming together with a committee of some kind and everyone taking a turn watching or driving, something to allow more people opportunities.
Yeah. Well, and I think like Kelly said too, I'm really trying to focus on listening as well, and not feeling like I need to have all the answers. There are a lot of people who understand this way better than me. I'm a random white girl and have been the recipient of white privilege. And, so I'm here to also listen and try to better understand how I can be a better partner in making some of these things happen, and to be able to take a step back and say, if I did something that was off, to say, look at myself and say, I'm sorry, and move on and try to do better. And at the end of the day, that's the work of life. That's called growth. And I think that we all as artists, I think, are very focused on feedback and growth. And so I think that that's a really cool element of the arts that will help us in this area. Go ahead, Kelly.
I think you're right on. And another silver lining to these last few months of super crazy is now everybody is much more literate online, and we have ways when it comes to accessibility. If we have participants or students who really struggle to get to rehearsals or to do things, now we've had some experience with having these things online and having remote rehearsals or running lines or ways that we can still communicate with our people but not have to take the trip or be in the same room. And I see that as the possibility that can stay in what I do even after we find our new normal. We always make the jokes about, that meeting could have been an email. Well, could that rehearsal have been online? And so I'm seeing it as an opportunity.
did also want to spend just a little bit of time talking about the impact of arts beyond just ourselves, beyond just further work in the arts. There's a lot of studies, including one that was done by Americans for the Arts, that shows that 72% of business leaders say creativity is the number one skill that they're looking for and that they need. Yet 85% of those businesses are saying we can't find anybody with those skills. Also, 97% of superintendents say that the dramatic arts, those courses help to build creativity, but only 4% of high schools in the US are offering dramatic arts courses. So there's obviously a disconnect here between what people need outside of arts worlds, outside of arts communities, and outside of just the, regular, if you're working in business or you're working in medicine or you're working in whatever, that people need these other skills. So as an arts educator, what kinds of resistance to funding do you see for the arts? And how do you feel like that impacts your students and their abilities to have these skills for the future?
Well, I think I really wish that, going through my, collegiate career, that we would have had more of advocacy for your program and specifics. We had a little bit of that. Dr. Dawn Clark at East Carolina, part of the curriculum we went through, and we talked about things like this, like, why is dance important? How do we convince somebody else that we have value? And obviously the facts are there, but I think what a lot of problem where the problem comes in is that it's hard to quantify the benefits of the arts. It's hard to sit there and go, that's because, at least in dance, with dance education, there's no end of course test that you take for dance. There's no, this, benefited because of the fact we had this program. But I think that we do have to continually, and I think most of us are innately, but I think that we have to be really smart about it and how we present, our art and why it's important, especially when you go into public schools and they may not have the money for it. How do you convince a superintendent or a principal to take advantage of the expertise that you have in this field? I know that, with the fact that our governor signed in the law about the arts requirement now, I think that's going to definitely help in that area, because now they have to fund it somehow. They have to. So I think that it's just very important that we almost as like a business, that we sit here and we go, this is why you need to have our program. We can do this, we can do that. If you're worried about funding, then we can do X, Y, Z in order to get it done, because at the end, the numbers need to add up and the value needs to be seen. You have to sell it, have to.
So coming from a public arts educator perspective on this, I know in our district, theater arts educators, we get nothing from the county. It is what it is, and we got to make it work. Music educators, I believe, I might be wrong on these numbers, but my husband is the band director at my school. The music teachers, band and chorus, they get to split $9,000 at each high school to where they need it. And that, I understand that, tubas cost thousands and thousands of dollars and they're not as accessible as other things, but we get nothing. Everything that we have to do is self-raised and self-funded. So I really think that there needs to be more education on grant writing and marketing your program, and not being afraid to ask for money. I know that I have survived off of Donors Choose projects, which the Hartmans have donated multiple times to my program. So thank you guys. And you have to not be afraid to ask for money, because there are grants out there. There are programs out there. There are things out there. Now, I don't know how much is out there right now with COVID, but hopefully when that settles down, those programs will be building back up again, and just people not being afraid to be uncomfortable to ask for money. I know that's hard, but that's a skill that I've had to develop over the last couple of years, because there are people that want to help. Another great organization that has helped me out so much and other educators is the Hickory Playground. And they're an organization founded in Hickory, North Carolina. These three young men saw a need in public schools, and they created this awesome program, and they've donated thousands and thousands to my program alone in the last 3 years. I think last year they gave over 20,000 to local art schools. So we need more people like that who see the need and are doing something about it. So just more education on grants and marketing to be able to ask people for those things.
Totally agree.
Wow. So this is kind of a dual answer, also kind of going back to what you were saying about what the biggest obstacle is. I feel like in my conversations with students and with parents, the biggest obstacle is how can you make this lucrative? How is this a good investment of your time? Students don't even comprehend how they can make a living in the arts. Aside from the delusions of grandeur of, just getting the big break and all that usual stuff, they don't know how to make a living at this. I think that there has to be more education and more informed decision making about what it means to be an actor, what it means to be a musician, what it means to be a teacher. All these things, to me, and I can speak for my own career, my own life, all of these things add up to one career in the arts. You're not just one thing. And people don't get that, whether you're talking to your parent or your grandfather or an administrator, there's more than one way to make a living at the arts. You're not just an actor. Maybe you're a musician too. Maybe you're an author too. Maybe you're a songwriter. Maybe you're a publisher. You teach as well. So I think, I spend a lot of time in conversation with students about what it is they can do. I want to be an art teacher. Oh, great. Okay. Well, I know my mom and dad don't want me to be an art teacher because they don't think that there's, going to be any money involved with that. Okay. Well, what else can you do? What does that mean to be an art teacher? How are you looking at it from not just a public school angle, but are you looking at it as a private project angle? What kind of grants are available to you to do certain things? Maybe you have one of those trending wine and paint shops as well. And the list goes on. All these different ideas have to manifest in a way that is going to convince people. It's like putting together a business plan or a grant proposal. You really have to walk them through it. And it's sad that after all this time, this still is a thing. But I'd say the business of the arts is something that needs more attention.
So another opportunity here, I think, in that we can look toward community collaboration. A lot of times when I think about the strength of my upbringing, it had to do with these really formative opportunities when I was in high school. There were very strong programs in the schools, and we had a very strong community theater. We had very strong programs in different churches, and everybody shared personnel and resources. Well, that model doesn't exist right now in my community, and resources are hard to get. Time is short, tempers are short, everybody's overworked and under supported. So it's so important to be deliberate in helping create that community collaboration. And I think the problem that we have right now is that we're monetizing our craft instead of our business. And there are things that we have to do to earn money, to run a business or to run a school and to buy instruments and music. But we also have to think outside of that and not monetize our craft and keep creating opportunities that help that education and that growth. That part is really, really hard when you're using every ounce of energy just to keep the business running. And so what I'm encouraging people is, make it an actionable item within your organization to recruit a new person or a new team whose sole responsibility is finding ways to collaborate within the community, to reach out. You're doing a great concert. Can you offer an opportunity for people from the dance company to join in? Did you call the high school to say, hey, I know you've got a show coming up. Are you good for costumes? We have a costume closet. Maybe we could talk. It's a lot more effort, and it's really hard, and it seems impossible because everybody's already putting in, so many hours. But I do think it's worth the effort to try to recruit even more people on board to keep this idea of collaborating with the community as a really high priority within the organization, because in the long run, I think that's what is going to keep the arts growing and moving. A study just came out this week, I read. It was from Culture Track, and it was culture and community in a time of crisis. And they basically surveyed all of these people to see, are arts organizations important to you, and how are they important? And just the intrinsic, I have to have the arts, has dropped significantly. It's still important, but it's more on a performance and escapism, and let's just let it wash over me. But then on the education end, it's still really important to connect with different cultures and students. So it's like there's this weird dichotomy now, and there's this exhaustion in the community from the pandemic and from all of the other things going on. There will be a second study in September, and I'm really curious to see how some of these things change, because the original was before the Black Lives Matter movement was happening. And so just watching studies like that, watch what your community arts organizations who put out statistics do. They're thick and they're dense and they're not super entertaining, but the information is crucial because it lets you know what your community wants out of organizations. And a lot of times it doesn't match what people say they want for their children in education. And so then you end up, fighting this, well, you said you wanted us to educate your kids on the arts, but then what happens when they're not in school anymore? So the big picture is still there, and it's overwhelming. And I think that's why we really have to figure out ways to work together.
I agree with Kelly 100% as far as needing to come together as a community. I think that I think that there's this weird innate fear that we have that if we share what we have, we're going to be taken advantage of. And it actually drives me up the wall because I sit here when I was artistic directing for a dance studio down in Charleston, we had 4 dance studios within, I'd say, maybe 5-10 miles. And you would think, oh my gosh, they would just, eat each other up and everything. But everybody had their own niche. Everybody had their own thing that they did very well. But I was never one of those people that said, no, you can't go and take dance from another dance studio. You can only be at my dance studio. And it's this weird, and I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I feel like it's in our community of like, we can't help somebody else because of the fact that we're giving away our craft, we're giving away the thing that makes us the money, and I do think that there needs to be some retraining in our community that just because you help, just because you extend, just because you may have charged somebody for this and you're not now, does not mean that you're necessarily getting taken advantage of. Right now, specifically, we do need to act more as a community, and we do need to support each other, because that's what art is. We help each other. We support, because if you're in a show, if you're in a recital, if you're in whatever it may be, and you've got one student who wasn't able to come to all those rehearsals because they didn't have a ride, or because they didn't have the money, or because they didn't have a resource, or they didn't have, extra copy of the music, whatever it may be. how good do you think that they're going to do? How good do you think that they're going to do at that recital, or, you know, whatever. We need to be like, I guess, like I said, more of a community.
I think we need to not be afraid to, like you guys were saying, kind of put ourselves out there and give, even if we're not getting directly. But then additionally, sometimes you just have to ask for things. It's amazing how sometimes when you just say, hi, can I have this? Someone will say, yeah, here you go. It's free. Take it. And I think people get like all caught up in their heads about it. And it's interesting because I'm named after a woman who started a theater that my dad grew up doing shows in. And that person, Jane Simmon Miller, who I was named after, her big thing was making something out of nothing. And she was never afraid to go to someone and say, hey, like, is there a possible way we could have this? And like, it's supporting the community and it gives back a lot. Is there any way you could like waive the fee or do it for us for free? And not to take advantage of the person, but just to present the value that was there innately. And it was amazing how often people said yes. And sometimes you just have to say, hey, you know that abandoned building, if we pay to fix it up, can we have it? And the city's like, please take it off our backs. We don't want it anymore. You know, that type of thing. So I think that that's really important, to come together as a community, not be afraid to give and not be afraid to ask for things. It's not, you know, it's an important part of it.
Yeah, and in all of the collaborative productions I've done, it's always been scary for people when they start, because it's like, oh gosh, I'm giving away part of my life's blood here. And every single time at the end, everybody's like, oh my God, I'm so glad I did this. I feel so connected. I've met all these people, and they've seen boosts in their programs outside of the collaboration. And like Simmon was saying, you know, in this collaboration, because it doesn't benefit one company or another, it's kind of everybody, you know, we would ask, oh, you know, I kind of need this one thing. And somebody would say, well, here's the one thing, plus here's 10 more, you might want this. And then it just explodes. And it's counterintuitive. You don't think it's going to be like that. But every single time it has been when I've done collaborative performances. And that's what really fuels me and gives me hope and excitement for the future, and why I keep sort of preaching this idea, even though it's so scary and so difficult. It's an amazing thing.
I got really excited when you said asking things for people and they say yes. And I just want to give another shout out to Jeff Hartman. So he was my music director when Hickory Community Theater did Shrek 6-something years ago. And I did Shrek with my students last year. And I thought, dang, Jeff spent hours making all these part recordings. I wonder if he still has them. And I just sent him a Facebook message. I said, hey, bud, do you still have all those? And he just sent his Dropbox to me. So just another example of how, you know, you can better someone's life just by being kind and sharing what you've done with people. Thanks, Jeff. You're
welcome.
Allison, you let Theater Statesville borrow choir robes for a show they did last year. So it all comes kind of for full circle. I know the Green Room donated stuff for the Music Man, which unfortunately ended up not happening this particular year, but it's a beautiful thing to see everyone helping each other out.
And I think sometimes, you know, this has nothing to do with the arts. It just has to do with, you know, how I try to be as a person. But I always try to be like, if I have $5 extra that I can give to something, I'm going to do it. You know, like we used to go where I'm from. They would have this like fair at this local high school, and the music association would sell like snow cones, and the kids would work the snow cone booth. And I would always go and I would buy a snow cone, which was like $2. And I would give them the $8 of the $10 that I gave to them. And I would just be like, keep it, you know, it's a donation to the music program at the school. And, you know, I feel like I always feel strongly that giving even a small amount, and not just in dollars, but of yourself, of your time, of your care, of, you know, whatever it might be, comes back to you like 1,000-fold. And so even, you know, especially during COVID, I've really been trying to be cognizant of, you know, where I can give a couple of dollars, or where I can do something good, or where I can repost something that might have a positive impact on someone just from sitting on my couch, that I'm going to do that because it will come back to me ultimately in my self-worth and my value for myself. But then also it gives goodness to the community, which I know is not the technical, I'm sure that's not very articulate, but I just feel like it's so important. Jeff, go ahead.
I was just going to give a shout out to you. I mean, I'm very appreciative of the fact that you guys, your podcast, shared our fundraiser, and you said the nice things you said about working with me and Brightstar. A share costs nothing, and it goes such a long way. People really undervalue the benefit of just a single share on social media. It goes so far. And so we are very appreciative of what
of course, it was our pleasure. And again, Brightstar was it's a perfect example. Brightstar was such a beautiful experience for me, for Melissa, for everyone that was involved, and
for the audience.
Oh, thanks. And for, Melissa and I connected doing that show, et cetera. And, I feel like it's also really important, like when you share stuff like that, to try to give it a personal background. I think it has so much more impact for people when they see that this is a person, and this is, that person and their wife and their children and their mortgage and their, it's all of those.
Yeah.
And it helps have a bigger impact. And, that was absolutely our pleasure, and we will do it every single time for any one of you out there, for sure. Thank you guys for giving us so much of your time and talking through these topics. As a way of sort of wrapping up, why don't you each go around and kind of tell me what you always feel is the most important thing for your students to walk away with, when you're done working with them. And not necessarily at the end, but just, when they think back at their time working with you as an educator, what is the thing that you want them to hang on to? And then what do you hope for the future of performance arts education?
Well, I would say, and I think a lot of people will touch on this. I think the passion for dance, I mean, in whatever capacity that means, sometimes it may not mean, a profession, in dance. Sometimes it may just mean that, proper alignment when you work out at the gym, because of the fact you took a dance class. It's, it's that continuation of, interest and intrigue and, that lingers well beyond your class. And my hope for the future would be that we do become a more inclusive community, and we do grow from this. That our community as a whole learns from COVID, that learns from Black Lives Matter, that learns that maybe we weren't doing the best we could do in a particular area. Maybe there is something else we could do that could reach one more person, that could reach somebody who might not have that opportunity, and that we can all work towards that.
Oh boy. Well, I would say that there's so much to say. I don't know where to start. Look, I was a shy, awkward boy from Jersey. I still am. I'm still awkward. I'm still shy. But look, if I can make a career in the arts, anybody can. And I tell that to my students all the time. I'm like, there's so many students I have that are way more talented than I am, that have gotten off to a much earlier start than I ever did. And when there's any doubt that art, that music, acting, whatever it is, if there's any doubt that art doesn't benefit you in all walks of life, I'm living true. You should see my tax return, like everything on there. I mean, I do so many different things, and sometimes I'm like, how is this happening? Because I know me, and I'm like, I never expected this for me. So, I just have to look at it as a personal testimonial, for my students, that you can do so much in the arts. And, going back to, the whole business of the arts, what does that mean? It's not just one thing. It's so many different things. And going to what Kelly and Daniel and Allison were saying about collaboration, and yeah, we're all in this together. The more we support each other, the better. It does no good to live on our own little islands. And so anyway, I don't want to get on a tangent, but I would say if there's hope for me, there's hope for everybody else. There's hope for everyone I work with, hope for all artists out there. And the statistic after statistic that the arts empower you and help you to succeed no matter what walk of life you're in. It's exponential. So believe it. We're all here to testify to that. Let's keep doing it. And there it is.
When my students or anyone I work with leaves their time with me, I truly hope that they have some understanding that the arts are not an accompaniment to our life. It's not an extra. It's not just the background music or the thing that makes the car commercial look awesome. That is actually part of the fabric of who we are and our culture, and it adds something very important in so many different ways. And it's so multifaceted that it needs as many people as have that talent to make it happen. And so, their part is just as important as anybody else's. So the art that's made in a 6th grade classroom, to me, truly is just as important as the art that's happening on the major stages of the world. And my hope for the future is that people will allow themselves to connect with other people through the arts. I think that's the way forward, is that you can use the arts to understand other people, to understand other cultures, to understand yourself, your own privilege, your own biases. It's such a rich thing that we're a part of. And my hope is that we will get access for people to understand that for themselves.
I am baffled that I am speaking last on this question amongst all these people. You all have spoke so eloquently, and I feel like my brain is speaking great, but my mouth shall not. But with that question, what is, the one thing that you hope that your students walk away with? It's hard because on paper in public schools, your students are supposed to walk out the door knowing these essential standards that the state has set forth for you and your class. And I don't really care too much about those. I mean, I teach them and that's my job and I love that. But what I want my students to walk away with is empathy. And it's hard to explain this, but knowing why characters feel the way they feel, or knowing why this dance style or anything like that is appropriate. It's so important for kids to understand. And also the relationships that I build with my students. I care about that more than anything else. If my students are having a bad day, I want to know why. Well, with certain understanding, I want them to be able to come talk to me with any issues, and not be afraid to talk about any issues that they're having, because I'm sure I can find something in theater that will help them with those issues. And what do you hope for the future of performing arts education? For me, it's, I think I would boil it down to appreciation for the arts in general. It's hard because in public school, you have a wide range in a class. You have kids that really, 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 really want to take it and really want to do something and for their career in that pathway. But you also have kids that are there for the credit, whether it be they have to graduate, or in North Carolina, you have to have a certain amount of arts credits to go to a four-year university. So you've got the kids who are just there for the credit. And it's how do you reach both of them? You can't just focus all of your time on the kids that really, really want it. You have to focus on the kids that you also have to focus on the kids that are there for the credit. I've got so many juniors and seniors who take Beginning Theater Arts 1 and they find out that they really love it. And then they say, man, I wish I took this as a freshman, or I wish I took this in elementary school or middle school. So just building the appreciation for the arts. So when kids say, I really love this TV show and I really love this actor, why do you love that TV show? Why do you love that actor? So that's kind of how I feel about that.
For one thing you hope each student walks away with. I, of course, originally had like this long list, which you guys all touched upon because I think we all feel the same way about our students and everything. But for me, one thing that's just a little different is I'm a kind of a ball of anxiety and I'm pretty insecure. And so I like to share with my students that you can still do hard things, even if you are completely terrified. I have so many students who walk in and the first few weeks, they won't even get up and talk in front of the class. And I would never want to, force them or push them, but to see them at the end, get in front and even do a 30-second monologue, I want them to know they're not alone in their fears, and that every time I go on stage to perform, I am so scared. And when I teach a class, when I have a dance audition, I am so full of nerves and energy and just all the things that I just want them to know that they can do it even with all of that. So just a dose of confidence. But my hope, I think, was just similar to Kelly's in that accessibility. I mean, I have a lot of different hopes, but I think it was 5%. I can't remember what the statistic was earlier up, or 4% of high schools have the arts. Like that I can't even understand why there's such a small percentage. I would love for everyone to be able to at least try it, because I know so many people who thought it was a joke or it's super easy or it's this or that. And then they do something involved in the arts and they cannot believe how incredible it is and how life-changing it is. So if we can get more people to experience it, I think it can be life-changing.
I totally agree. And my hope for the future is that more people get to learn from this amazing panel of teachers and who get to take something away from the experience of knowing you guys, but also working with you guys. You have given so much to this conversation, and just as you do to your students. I hope someday we live in a world where we don't have to continually remind people of the value of the arts and what we do and how it impacts our culture. But for now, we will soldier on and continue to remind everyone every chance we get. Thank you so much for being here and giving us your time and your thoughts. A big reminder to our audience to go ahead and follow some of the different organizations that our panelists work for and with on social media, so you can keep up with updates. We'll also have guest features posted on social media with more information on these guys, so that you can follow all of the great work that they're doing all the time. We want to thank the audience for being here with us. Just a reminder to check out our other 4 episodes that were part of our launch that launched 2 weeks ago on August 10th. That was What We're All About, Creativity in the Coronavirus, Live or Nothing, and Not So Amateur Hour, which can all be found on Apple Podcasts. And definitely check out our website for more information about future episodes. Our next episode is actually going to be airing on Monday, 9/7, and that's going to be favorite stage experiences. So Melissa and I, it's just going to be us talking in depth about some of our favorite on-stage experiences and how those experiences had this major impact on us so far in our lives. And we're really excited to have that conversation and share that episode with you. Just a reminder again to follow us on social media, Instagram, Facebook, as well as checking out our website for different updates and future episodes. Thanks again for listening, and have a great day.